beneath the normal internet we all know, like YouTube, Facebook and Google, there lies the dark web, an anonymous, unregulated world with websites not accessible from search engines, a hidden corner of the internet where anything goes. For a while, the biggest site on the dark web was Silk Road, an online black market for all kinds of illegal goods and services, ranging from body parts to weapons to hitmen and most commonly of all, drugs. In fact, Silk Road was dubbed the Amazon of drugs because you could simply go to the Silk Road site, buy any substance you wanted with just a few clicks, and have it shipped to your doorstep like an Amazon package. But what's perhaps most surprising of all about this is who was behind this illegal empire. Meet Ross Ulbricht, our story's surprising protagonist. Ross grew up in a loving family in Texas. He was a Boy Scout as a kid, studied physics at university, and was thought of as a very sweet guy by all his friends and family. So imagine their shock when they realized Ross was the criminal mastermind behind the largest online drug empire in history, responsible for over $1.2 billion worth of sales of illegal goods and services. Not just that, but this sweet kid had reportedly paid hitmen to kill his enemies. Or did he? To this day, there is debate over whether Ross is guilty or not. So in this video, we're going to dive into the murky world of the dark web and explore the true story behind the infamous Silk Road marketplace. We're also going to look at how the government really managed to track down Ross, despite the fact that Ross was using the Tor browser, which made him completely anonymous. How do you find someone who can't be tracked? This is a true story filled with mysteries, twists, and even a couple of corrupt government agents. Welcome to the fascinating story of the Silk Road Empire. Ross Ulbricht wanted to change the world, but his life so far had been a series of almosts. He tried several business ideas, but never quite got anywhere with them, and he was starting to feel like his life was passing him by. However, there was one business idea Ross kept coming back to, an online marketplace where people could buy or sell anything imaginable, with no limits or restrictions. Now you see, Ross was a staunch libertarian and would regularly debate with people about why the government shouldn't have so much control over people's lives, especially when it came to drugs, which he felt should all be legalized. He'd say it's not the government's right to tell people what they can or can't put in their bodies. And whenever someone tried to argue back about safety concerns, Ross would say, well, should we outlaw Big Macs from McDonald's too? Because they make people gain weight and have heart attacks and die. Or what about cars? They kill millions every year. And so to Ross, the idea of a marketplace where people could buy and sell whatever they wanted was not just a business to potentially make a lot of money. In his view, it was also a way to free people and help the world. After some research, Ross discovered there was a web browser called Tor, which allowed you to access the dark web, where you couldn't be tracked or traced. The Tor browser was actually developed by the US Navy as a way to communicate privately over the internet by concealing a user's real IP address and identity. By using this, Ross realized people would be able to buy things online without the government being able to see what they were doing. But at first, Ross didn't go any further with the idea, because there was no way to accept payments online that couldn't easily be traced. For example, credit cards would keep a log of every transaction someone made and be linked to their bank accounts. So for a little while, the site remained just an idea in Ross's mind, until the summer of 2010, when Ross came across a new technology called Bitcoin, a digital currency which could be transferred anonymously, thus allowing people to buy whatever they wanted without a trace. It was exactly what he needed. So, from his bedroom, Ross began working on his new online marketplace. He decided to call it Silk Road, named after a famous trade route that had started over 2,000 years ago that people used for centuries to carry all kinds of different goods. Understandably, Ross was very wary of anyone knowing about the site he was building, which unfortunately meant he had to build it all by himself. The only person he told at first was his girlfriend Julia. Now, his girlfriend was a little concerned, but Ross reassured her that thanks to the Tor web browser and Bitcoin, it would all be completely anonymous, so nothing could be traced back to him. As for making the site itself, it was slow work to figure everything out, as building an entire online marketplace by himself was a massive job. But Ross was determined, and he worked very long hours to make it a reality. Sat at his laptop coding all day, and most of the nights, he would just occasionally take a break to watch one of his favorite shows, Breaking Bad, the story of a normal guy who becomes a drug kingpin. However, as Ross was finally nearing completion of the Silk Road sites, he realized he had a problem. He needed some product to actually sell on his new marketplace. It was no use building the platform if when people first came, there was nothing to buy. So Ross rented out a building in the middle of nowhere and began growing his own magic mushrooms, using a book that was essentially a dummy's guide to building your own mushroom farm. This would be the first product to ever be sold on the Silk Road marketplace. By early 2011, after a year of work on the site, he was ready to launch it to the world. He'd added categories for all different types of drugs. To begin with, the only item listed was the mushrooms he'd grown himself, but the plan was that sellers from all over the world would list their own items for sale. Of course, in order to attract both buyers and sellers to the site, he needed to promote it. Remember, sites on the dark web are not picked up by search engines, and it's also not like Ross could just run some Facebook or Google ads to help find customers for his illegal marketplace. So to get the word out about his new site, Ross went onto several internet forums to spread the word. For example, he joined a site called The Shroomery for fans of shrooms and made a post pretending to be a customer interested in using Silk Road. The reason he did this was so it didn't seem like he was promoting his own websites. He knew that by casually name-dropping Silk Road, people on the forums would go and check it out for themselves. And they did. Orders soon started coming in. Now, this was all happening at the beginning of 2011, and at the same time, Ross was working at a little bookstore in Texas called Good Wagon Books. But this worked out really well, because it meant Ross had everything he needed to easily ship out his shrooms. Because he was able to use the bookshop's padded envelopes and label maker, he also used a vacuum sealer that normally would keep food fresh to wrap the mushrooms up. So Ross was in business, and was initially shipping off orders twice a week. But as the site's popularity grew through word of mouth, Ross soon had to start mailing shipments out every day as more and more orders were coming in. But even better than that, other people had started selling items on Silk Road. Other dealers had created their own listings, with everything from weed to coke to ecstasy. And of course, more products for sale helped attract even more buyers, and Silk Road initially took a 6.23% commission on every single trade. In order to make people feel more comfortable using the sites, Ross also built a rating system where buyers and sellers could review each other, similar to eBay's feedback system or Amazon reviews. Ross worked tirelessly on the site and was constantly exhausted, but he was also incredibly excited by its growth. When he first made the site, he honestly hadn't been sure if anyone would use it at all, and yet in just a couple of months, he'd already made thousands of dollars in revenue. He told his girlfriend Julia about the progress of the sites. Although she was slightly less excited. Julia was concerned by the fact harder drugs were now being sold on Silk Road, especially when she realized someone had even started selling heroin on there. Her doubts about the whole thing started to grow, and she asked Ross, what if someone overdoses? Or sellers send out stuff that's been tampered with or laced with something else? Ross confidently reminded her of the rating system